Hello, Elevator community. Welcome to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. My mission is to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs in creating your growth plan, which is going to free your time, allowing you to rest easy. I'm your host, Sean Madden. I've had an amazing 35 years in the elevator industry, starting out in the field, managed several elevator companies, started, built, and sold Madden Elevator Company for well over market value, and serving as your NAC president. I've done a lot in the industry, and now I'm ready to pay my knowledge forward. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Elevator Entrepreneur Show. I'm here with Brad Hoersten of ElevatorZip. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks for having me.
So, Brad and I were just talking. It's always intriguing to me to hear how people got in the elevator industry and their journey along the way. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got in the industry, and what brought you to today.
So I started in the industry because I found some elevator companies at the job fair in college. And my first job was in Miami. So I started in the temporary union card trainee program. I did construction. So I did that, had that temporary card for either 6 to 9 months. And then went into sales. I did sales in Florida. This was like maintenance and repair sales in Florida for about 2.5 years. Then I went to another company in Chicago and did that for 6.5 years. And same thing, mostly maintenance and repair sales. As I started to learn about some of the details of the repair industry, we can go in more detail on this, but the details and kind of the problems with repair sales, I left, and about 5.5 years ago, I started ElevatorZip to solve some of the problems that I had while selling repair sales. I've been doing that for 5.5 years, and now I still work at ElevatorZip. I'm the owner of ElevatorZip, and that's all I focus on now is repair sales.
Nice. Well, congratulations making it past the 5-year mark. It's a big task, and I know, as most elevator entrepreneurs know, all the hard work and dedication you've put into that, it doesn't happen by chance. You really have to dig in and work hard and make mistakes, mess up, correct, and keep plowing forward. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things you mentioned I found it interesting. We always talk about going to job fairs, the elevator industry, like get to job fairs, get to job fairs. We got to let people know that we're here. And it's cool to see somebody like you actually came in that way, grown up through the industry, and now is a supplier to the industry. And I love ElevatorZip. It's one of my favorite tools out there. I've used it at several different companies, including my own. So I encourage people to check it out. But that's really cool, Brad. Thanks for sharing. One of the things that we want to talk about is challenges. So as you grew your business and you ran into different challenges, what's one of the bigger ones that you had? And let's just talk through some of the things you tried to solve it.
So maybe what I could do is break this into 2 parts. So now I work at a software company where I provide software to elevator service companies to help them with repair sales. I could talk about some of those problems that I faced with running a software business. But before that, I'll first talk about some of the problems that I faced in repair sales when I worked for elevator companies that led me into starting this software company. And this was at every company. But basically, the things I started to realize as I spent more time at companies, worked in multiple markets, and made friends that were in different industries, I realized that some of these problems were the same for a lot of people. One of the first things I learned in the industry was that if you're going to sell repair, you got to partner with your mechanics. The mechanics are the best one to sell repair. And of course, that's 100% true because first, mechanics are the way that you get the information of what needs to be upgraded. They're the ones that identify there's a mechanical starter at a job and they need a soft starter. They're the ones that see that there's car top handrails that are missing and the gap is past code, or they are the ones that give the sales leads to you as the sales rep. And after you then package up that proposal for that soft starter and send it to the customer, they are the ones that really help you close the sale. So what I realized at every single company that I worked at was that 2 things were true. One is that there was basically a surplus of repair sales, and just the opportunity was much bigger than what I was seeing as a sales rep. So maybe to explain that a little bit better, what is if I followed around a mechanic for a couple days, maybe 2 or 3 days, I would see like 15 to 20 different sales opportunities, like starters, pit ladders that are missing, door operators that need to be done. But back in the office, I'd be lucky if I heard about one of them per week. I would do everything I could to try and get mechanics to pass me more of that information. I'd take them to lunch, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. But
They
that
were
was the
your
first.
customers. They were your customers, basically, the mechanic.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yes. That was the first thing I noticed is as a sales rep, I would wait for these leads to come in. And of course, I would do surveys myself, but I can't see as many controllers in machine rooms as a mechanic that's spending every single
Mhm.
day. And then there's 15 mechanics that I work with. So that was the first problem that I saw is there's a lot more repair sales opportunities that are out there that are just not making it into the sales team. So that way the sales team can propose it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing was that I noticed if a mechanic helped nudge the customer towards buying that soft starter after I sent the proposal, the likelihood of it converting to a sale was much higher if the mechanic had the conversation. So
Right.
if by myself I just sent the proposal for a soft starter and there was no follow-up from the mechanic, I would sell some that way. But if the mechanic went back afterwards and said, I know that Brad sent you a proposal, let me show you this soft starter. If that happened, the likelihood of a sale is much higher. Those were the two problems that I had, and I realized were true across all of my time in the elevator industry.
One of the things I noticed in that world, because I came from the field, I remember hearing all the time, I've wrote this up a ton of time. I don't know if they sent it to the customer. I'm so tired of writing this up. My customer's tired of seeing it. And they kind of give up in writing up the stuff that they've wrote up over and over again, but nobody's doing anything about it. They don't know whether the office did anything with it. They don't know whether the customer got it. They'll talk to their customer. Sometimes the front line doesn't even know. So they
Yes.
kind of give up about what's going on with it.
So I think you're talking about them giving up because they would send a lead to the office for that soft starter by email or phone call and say, please propose that to this customer. And the mechanic would never hear back. Yes, that's what happened. That's also one of the problems that I found and another kind of the genesis of ElevatorZip. But yes, the way that I solve that in part of ElevatorZip is, of course, just notifying the mechanic when things are proposed. So they have the
Mhm.
full visibility over what's been proposed and how much commission they can earn. But before ElevatorZip, the way I would handle that is I would try my hardest to meet with a mechanic, and every time I had lunch with him or whatever, I would have their route list. And I would try and have the proposals that I've sent at each building so I could walk them through it and say, please follow up with this building. I sent this and this. And of course, I would text or call them as soon as the proposal went out the door. Part of the reason why I started ElevatorZip as well.
Building that relationship with the mechanic is always extremely important. And I remember I had a salesperson that was trying to sell repair sales and continually struggling to grow it. And I said, what did the tech say? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you need to be going to meet with the tech and talking to them about what's the important ones and what's not, and how can you help them and how can you support them and make them your friend, and they will go drive what needs to be driven because they know more than anybody. And they're like, I didn't even know I could meet with the tech, which told me I got to work on my processes because he should have already known that. But actually helped me bring in salespeople with a better process of how to sell. Because in repair sales, it is totally different because oftentimes the repair salesperson don't really know the owner. They're getting the info from the tech. So essentially, like you were talking about earlier, the tech is almost your customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said keeping the mechanic happy. I mean, I've worked with mechanics so many times where they're just dealing with a problem of shutdowns or whatever that can't be solved without buying an upgrade. And until the customer gets that proposal for the upgrade, the perception
Mhm.
is like the mechanic might not be doing the service. And it's actually not the mechanic's fault. I mean, they're just dealing with older equipment. But until the proposal gets to the customer and now it's up to them to upgrade the equipment, it's written up, and now there's a solution presented to them. Until that happens, the pressure is more on the mechanic. So as soon as that proposal is sent, it takes the pressure off the mechanic because now it flips it to the building. It's their responsibility now to solve this by upgrading.
That's a good perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way. Like the mechanic gets it off his shoulders a little bit.
Yeah, and by the way, as a sales rep, I used to try and do that too. I would always have this fear of sending proposals sometimes because the way that when you're backwards and you're reacting, if things are failing and there's a huge problem, and then you have to go and send the proposal for that door operator. There's not much trust there, and they're angry, and they're like, wait a second, you're finally proposing a door operator when things are going bad now, and it's this thing that you've never told me about for thousands of dollars. So I always wanted to get as many proposals out, because even if the customers never bought them, me as a sales rep, it would give me a little bit of, when it was time to renew the contract and they were complaining about a shutdown, I could review their shutdowns with them over the past years, and I could say, look, again, yes, you had a bad month on this month, but remember, we did propose this and you didn't buy it. So then it's back on them and takes a little bit of pressure off the whole organization.
100%. And one of the things I always loved about getting proposals out the door was liability. If something's recommended, you get it out the door, at least it's in the customer's hands. And if something comes up, you can go back and at least say, hey, we've recommended this. And the other thing from that perspective is, I think when you can provide information, it's like the duty to make sure that your customer knows what is going on with their elevator. Now, if they choose not to do anything, it's totally up to them. You can't control that. But to your point of talking to the mechanic about what are the key problems, what really needs to be solved, getting the proposal in the customer's hand, and then letting the mechanic come back around. Talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you drive the mechanic to come back around and try to help close that deal for you?
That was a challenge as well. With ElevatorZip, of course, there's a way for mechanics, when they get to the job, look up the full history, what's been proposed, and their commission potential. Before that, when I worked for an elevator company, I would try as many tactics as possible. So we would do things a lot. I would do like mini route reviews. Basically, they were just informal lunches, as many lunches as possible is what I did. But the whole purpose of the lunch was to have a list of those things that I've sent, try and remind the mechanic that I did propose that. So that way, at least next time he's there, he can make a recommendation.
That makes total sense. You were going to talk a little bit about when you turned tech company, some business challenges you've been dealing with there.
The way elevators have started was basically to solve some of those initial problems. There's a lot of sales opportunities that aren't out there. So I had to have an easy way and a good way to send leads into the office. And that was really the first thing that was built at ElevatorZip. And of course, an easy way for a mechanic to get notified when things are proposed, a way for them to see their commission potential, and an easy record when they get to the job. They can see that there's 2 or 3 proposals lingering, and here's how much commission they'll earn if they help close the sale. So that was really the start of ElevatorZip, to solve some of those problems where you're going to get more leads in and then the percentage of sales that are closed. There's so many other issues in the process. In between the lead arriving to the office and then getting the proposal out the door, there's so much that happens, so much legwork. If you think about a lead comes in the door and it's for, let's say, a traveling cable, and you got to get a material quote, you got to get a labor quote, you got to figure out if there's a permit, you got to do some research, you got to email some suppliers. There's so many things that need to be done in order for that to get out the door. Some of the first challenges that happened there was like, okay, how are we going to solve this? Because what was happening at organizations sometimes that were using our product was they had a ton of leads coming in, but then what are you going to do with it? You have to accelerate this process of emailing suppliers and everything else. One of the first things we did to solve that in-between spot was, if I get a lead for a traveling cable that needs to be done, I call the supplier. The supplier says, we need to know the rise of the building and how many shielded pair. So then I call the mechanic and say, hey, I need to know the rise of the building and how many shielded pair. He's got to go back to the job later, and then it takes forever. So one of the first things that was deployed to solve that was forms for all of those things. So that way, when a mechanic selects a traveling cable, he's presented with the questions of how many shielded pair and what's the rise of the building. That way, when the lead comes in, they have everything they need. We're building solutions to all of these hurdles that are in the in-between process.
It sounds like from a business perspective, business challenge, you came in, you saw a problem in the field as a salesperson, you developed a product, jumped out, started a business, solved some of those problems, and then got hit with a whole slew of other problems that you didn't even think about as you're building this tech company that related to how the office is having to deal with those incoming projects. So yeah, just elaborate a little more on what was the process of taking you through how to solve those problems, and trying to give our listeners some insights into things that might help them.
Yeah, these are all problems that I had back when I was a sales rep as well. And I always wanted to solve these. So I hated it. I'd get a lead from a mechanic for something small, like a car top inspection station. And I'm like, I haven't proposed one of these probably in 14 months. I have no idea who sells a car top inspection station. I have no idea what questions need to be like, what items do you need? We just released a way where you could type when the lead comes in, while you have the lead as the sales rep, there's a search bar and you could type in car top inspection station and it will show you a list of all the suppliers that sell that. And you could tap on that and it will shoot off a quote to one of the suppliers and package up all the information from the mechanic, the images that the mechanic sent you,
Oh, perfect.
all the detail, and then it will go right off to the supplier. That way, the sales rep really doesn't have to do that much thinking anymore, especially for something small dollar like a car top inspection station.
I guess there's a ton of different aspects and different ways that things come in. What are the different challenges? There's probably hundreds of them you're dealing with.
Yeah, at the end of the day, getting quality information from the field. The problem is when you're there on the job, when the mechanic is there on the job and he sees a widget that needs to be upgraded, nobody knows what questions the seller of that widget will ask you in order to give you a material quote. They don't know that until it gets to the sales rep. And then the sales rep reaches out to the widget company and the widget company says, I can't quote you until I have these three things. And then it comes back and then it's this whole cycle. There's so many steps in the process and we're trying to eliminate all of them and make all of them as easy as possible. We're starting to work with suppliers, give pricing as well ahead of time, because if the suppliers know their pricing, why do you need someone to reach out and say, how much is a starter? Here's all the information. The sales rep should know, here's the range of a soft starter. It's between, I'm gonna make this up, $500 and $800 for a soft starter. As a sales rep, you could get a proposal out the door immediately. Starting to build all of that in as well, where the pricing information automatically shows up. The main thing is forms though. Yeah.
Forbes, yeah, pulling the data in. I remember all these issues, not only at my company, but every company I worked at. You only got so much time, right? So the lead comes in, the salesperson sometimes makes the decision, do I think I can sell that or do I not think I can sell that? But then you don't get the lead out the door potentially because it takes a lot of research and data. For example, soft starts, you can get into a whole slew of questions. Incoming power, is there room to put the soft start upgrade in there? Is it a wide delta or across the line starter? Like all these general questions. The tech doesn't know to answer all those questions. He just knows like initially it needs an upgrade. It needs the new version because it's going to help in so many different ways. And I love repair sales. It's one of the points that I felt is a big miss in our industry because it helps continually improve the elevator, give the customer better service, give them information. And oftentimes repair sales in general isn't an immediate now. It's here's some things to look at. You can budget for it. You can plan for it. So it's informing them. I'm working with a company now. They like to say duty to inform. And that's a really good way to put it. So it's pretty exciting, all the stuff you're doing, Brad. So why don't you leave our listeners, our elevator entrepreneurs, with one business tidbit, piece of advice, golden nugget. What would you give an elevator entrepreneur from ElevatorZip?
I would agree with exactly what you just said, and I would add on it a little bit. Sales is this unique thing that you can get. You could take care of your customer, make them safer, more reliable elevators. There's not much competition, right? You're pretty much, if you propose it to your customer, there's like a 90% chance that that business is going to go to you if they buy it. So you're not really competing with anyone else. It's high margin. But the one thing I wanted to add is you already have the personnel and the manpower in place to really dive in on repair sales. You have mechanics that are already seeing the sales opportunities every single day. You have the mechanics in place visiting the customers. They have the relationships with the customers. This is an area that you have all of the personnel in place. There's no one you need to hire. It's about getting them the right information at the right time. And everyone in that chain of getting a proposal out the door and closing the sale. Since you already have everything in the right place, just getting the right tool is, I guess, my nugget of advice that I would give. Maybe to add on that is when I first started ElevatorZip, I reached out to as many people as possible. I reached out to guys that were head of mergers and acquisitions. I spoke to the guy, retired head of mergers and acquisitions at Schindler, head of mergers and acquisitions at Otis, also some of the consultants in the industry that help package up and sell independent elevator companies. Their perception was the same, that a lot of independent elevator companies really don't focus on repair sales. And it's like this untapped potential. One of the consultants that I spoke to that's in the industry says that for every $1 of service revenue that you have, you should get $1 of repair revenue from that same customer every single year. So if you have a contract that gives you $1,000 service revenue every year, you should be getting, or at least targeting, $1,000 of repair revenue from them.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. That's some great advice. I've heard repair sales often are 50% of overall recurring revenue and maintenance. So I would say the dollar for dollar is about a 50% return on that. Selling that actually works out pretty consistent. But that's some great advice, Brad. I really appreciate you being on the show. We could actually sit here and talk elevator shop all day long because it's always fun for me. Repair sales is something I'm very passionate about as well. Thanks for all the advice that you offered our fellow elevator entrepreneurs.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Entrepreneur Podcast. I truly hope this information helps my fellow elevator entrepreneurs to build your growth plan so you can free your time, allowing you to rest easy. If you need help getting your elevator business organized for growth, I've created tools and templates inside my favorite business operating system that you can access for free. Plus, you can have a 30-day free trial of the software. Just head over to elevatorstrategichub.com/EBOS. That's /EBOS to get your free access, or you can click the link below. Thanks again. I'll be back next time with a brand new episode on the Elevator Entrepreneur. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I will continue to empower my fellow elevator entrepreneurs.